Welcome to Linked Heritage, a podcast about museums and Wikipedia. I'm B, and I'll be taking you through the intersections and relationships between the free encyclopedia and the world of heritage, whether that be digital heritage, museums, or world heritage. Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, is known as the most popular source of information on the internet, and it's home to a wealth of knowledge specifically about heritage, all brought together by editors around the world from other sources like books, news, websites, and more. We're about to explore the stories of this website's attempts to reach out and touch the world of heritage, which haven't always been successful. From budding Wikipedia editors to the website's power players, and from the originator of the Wikipedian in residence to the creator of the museum of all things, we'll be joined by a variety of interviewees from across the GlamWiki community, where galleries, libraries, archives, and museums work alongside the Wikimedia Foundation's countless grassroots projects and initiatives. Can Wikipedia influence heritage, and can they work together? Could we call Wikipedia itself heritage? Episode 1. Is Wikipedia heritage? Wikipedia started out in 2001 and has no doubt become the most influential and well-known online encyclopedia, as well as the largest and most popular educational site in the world. In 2024, it was subject to 296 billion page views, supported by 597 million edits. The website is massive, and it holds a vast amount of our history, both in information about the heritage of the world it covers on its articles, and in the community and the creation of the site itself. This episode, I'll be asking, has Wikipedia ever tried to be officially recognised by heritage institutions? Can we experience an encyclopedia in a way that it feels like a museum? Is Wikipedia itself heritage? Part 1. Has Wikipedia tried to become World Heritage before? 14 years ago, in 2011, Wikipedia had amassed about 18 million pages and had become highly popular. Its co-founder, Jimmy Wales, was looking to push the site, in his own words, as a cultural phenomenon. So in May that year, an idea was proposed at the Wikimedia conference in Berlin on the encyclopedia's 10th anniversary. What if Wikipedia could become the first ever digital entity to be listed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization? Of course, this was a long shot. After a petition was opened for the bid on 23rd of May that year, little news came out about the attempt, and nothing about that specific petition has come to pass since. Liam Wyatt, Senior Technical Program Manager at the Wikimedia Foundation, told me exactly why.
As you know, there was a campaign run by Wikimedia Deutschland over a decade ago that was more of a petition. It was more of an awareness-raising campaign to say, hey, look, there's this cool thing that is worthy of our understanding as cultural heritage. What is heritage? What is digital heritage? The world should be thinking about that and talking about that. It was not an application to UNESCO. It was a petition and a campaign for awareness raising around the world, in particular in Germany. But notably, that particular recognition, that particular category, is for physical buildings, human construction, and natural places. The World Heritage List is also national. An individual country and its UNESCO affiliate has to nominate a physical place or building in its jurisdiction. We are multi-jurisdictional. We're not, America in theory, because it's an American website originally and it's registered in America with an American founder. But I think a lot of Wikimedians would object that we are a quote-unquote American website.
What he also told me, however, is that no, actually it's not quite over. There are other lists.
There are two other categories of heritage designation that UNESCO offers. One of them is the list called Intangible Cultural Heritage. This is for things like particular styles of dance, particular styles of cuisine, particular styles of music or oral history that change and are brought forth generation to generation in different cultures. Interesting, potentially. I'm not so sure, but it's the idea of crowdsourcing and change over time. You're bringing forth knowledge through generations.
Okay, maybe not that one. It doesn't seem to fully fit. What about the Memory of the World programme?
The final one, I believe, is relevant. This is called Memory of the World. UNESCO Memory of the World is the Documentary Cultural Heritage Register. This is a list of things that are documents or collections of documents. To use their vocabulary, fonds, the French word for archival collection, a database of stuff that is compiled of one type. Memory of the World is a list of documentary cultural heritage. It's about documents, and that can be individual or grouped, as I mentioned. It can be heritage either because of its form, so the shape, it's the oldest stone tablet, it's the best preserved papyrus, it's the first CD-ROM. It could be the content, so it's just a book, but it's the first known example of that language being written, or it's the earliest copy that remains of this particularly famous speech. So it's not the object that it is preserved upon, it is the knowledge contained within it. Or thirdly, the heritage value could be for the period of time or culture and community that it represents. I argue that Wikipedia, its articles, its talk pages, its history of both, and the documentation that goes around it, the editorial debates, the policy pages, are heritage documents in this category, in all three: format, content, and time and place. And myself and another British Wikimedian, John Cummings, who has also been a Wikipedia resident at UNESCO himself, we have been working for the last decade to nominate Wikipedia, all languages, for Memory of the World status. This process is a 2-year-long application process for each round, and it had closed down for nominations for a few years in between as well. And the next round comes up in November this year, where we'll be submitting again, because we have been rejected at the last 2 rounds. The first formal nomination, we made a extensive nomination, 80 pages worth of documentation, 300 footnotes, very extensive details about why we believe Wikipedia counts as heritage in their rules, according to their criteria. And the first time we nominated the quote-unquote live version. But importantly, one of the criteria is that the document nominated or inscribed, to use their vocabulary on the list, must be quote-unquote finite and complete. And it also can't be what they call a whole of archive nomination. You can't just say, we're a library, everything in our library is important, it's all heritage. Now you have to actually put a boundary on it, put a border on it. These criteria ended up being in conflict with how they understood Wikipedia to work. I understand that. The subcommittee, the academic committee, approved us, but the ultimate, more final committee rejected. We went back to the drawing board. 2 years later, we nominated again, this time with a static representative sample stable version on the day of Wikipedia's 20th birthday, which was 2001, January 15. Okay, we'll take a snapshot. This day in time is a representative sample of what Wikipedia is and all of the history pages that come up to this date, recognizing that it will have errors, omissions, things have changed since, but then again, factual accuracy and completeness is not a criteria for documentary cultural heritage. So we nominated the static version of Wikipedia, and that got rejected on the basis that it doesn't represent how Wikipedia operates. It's not a representative of the nature of the document. I think these 2 rejection statuses are contradictory. And in both times, the committee said that this does not contradict their agreement with the nomination that Wikipedia does represent significant cultural heritage for its time, for a people of the internet culture, of different languages, particularly languages and their attempt to be preserved online, and the style of knowledge production and consumption. Not the individual facts within Wikipedia. Nothing on Wikipedia is new knowledge, as we know, but as a representation of the internet, which is a document or a type of document, it's got to be us. Like, what else could there be that represents the heritage value of our era in humanity than Wikipedia? So we're going to come back again and we'll try again. I don't quite know yet. We've got a couple of months how to reinterpret our nomination to basically say, look, this is a you problem, not an us problem. But yes, I do believe Wikipedia does constitute cultural heritage in this particular manner.
All right, start the clock. No matter what happens, it's still true that Wikipedia for World Heritage was part of the beginning of a movement towards closer and closer collaboration between UNESCO and the Wikimedia Foundation, where both Wikipedia and UNESCO have begun to work together to further the shared goals of both organisations. Something that Wikipedia for World Heritage also did, however, was ask the question of whether Wikipedia could be considered not just a website, but a place. Part 2. What is the Museum of All Things? I arrive in the vast lobby of a museum. From the light wooden floor, the white walls tower to the ceiling. There's an unstaffed help desk in front of me, and maps of the museum to either side. They depict coloured areas of knowledge that extend out from the lobby I'm standing in. Science ahead of me in blue, geography in green, technology in pink, culture, art, history, media, people are the massive categories of knowledge I can quite simply walk toward and wander into. I stroll to the culture section and decide to enter a hallway signposted with the High Five. A wooden doorway quickly ascends out of my way, revealing a white room. Marble slabs slide upwards from beneath the floor, spaced apart along the walls, light cast delicately from overhead. Some of these slabs depict text, much in the way a museum would, though there's more text than you would usually see in an exhibition, and the text is highly encyclopedic. Upon other slabs are mounted images of people high-fiving from all over the world, some professional and some less so. I look to my right and I see a corridor of these images extending far in front of me. Photographs, illustrations and 3D renders line the walls. No matter their quality or who made them, these images are now artworks, worthy of being displayed on these walls. I could spend hours here, but decide to travel down another corridor linked to this exhibition. I could go to the room about Dusty Baker, a possible co-inventor of the High Five, or to the room about gay pride. I elect to go to the page for the COVID-19 pandemic, linked because of the transfer of the disease through the physical contact of a high five. There I see walls of information, charts and photographs of doctors and nurses laying on the ground, exhausted. Nothing could have prepared me for the moment when I found the Museum of All Things, a game and museum experience where you explore the corridors of Wikipedia, put together by a young, independent game developer.
Are you able to hear me okay? My name is Maya Claire, and I guess, sort of an independent games developer. I was working as a computer programmer for a long time, but right now I am not, and I'm just doing projects independently. I hope that's not too long-winded of an introduction.
Maya Claire's Museum of All Things is not a physical museum per se, if there ever could be an exhaustive definition of the term. Instead, it takes the form of a digital museum inside an indie video game. But is it really a game?
I mean, I think that game isn't wrong to call it. I feel like just because you can't win it or it doesn't have traditional like game mechanics, that doesn't necessarily make it not a game. But I guess like I'd love to think of it as just like a virtual museum, something that's kind of in the same sort of realm as a physical one, but just the only difference would be that you visit it through your computer. I try to kind of keep to that in the material that I write about it, like on the website. I have a brochure. I spent some time getting a picture for the front of it. And like also I set up like a website with a gift shop to try to make it feel more legitimate as a museum also.
Despite having a total offline file size of around 200 megabytes, the museum would probably take up the landmass of the US state of Philadelphia. It's since been updated to support the languages English, French, German, Spanish, Japanese, Portuguese, and Bengali, making use of Wikipedia's own translations.
I have a background in web development and particularly like web standards. So like the standards specifying HTML and like different APIs that websites can use and this sort of thing. I have been thinking about how for the web with like hypertext, it's sort of this very simple but really multi-purpose text format for specifying documents. I guess I was thinking about like how interesting it'd be to have a sort of equivalent to that for three-dimensional environments where you could have interlinked areas. and things like this? And could you have a sort of equivalent of like hypertext for the web, but sort of in 3D as a kind of like metaverse type thing, but in a way where it's using web principles where everybody hosts their own website and this sort of thing. And so that just sort of got me imagining like what would websites look like if you were to sort of render them in 3D or create them as 3D environments. And I think where I sort of landed with that was like, I don't want to really launch down this huge project of like trying to make like a 3D web. I just wanted to think about what would be the most interesting website for me to visit if I could turn a website into a location. And the answer to that for me was definitely like Wikipedia. It seemed like it has so much information in there that I would love to explore in that way. And it's also very accessible with APIs. So that was sort of the direction I went. And then the whole like museum kind of theme came from that.
Maya took her inspiration from educational videos she watched as a child, particularly the introduction to the British nature and science television series Eyewitness. It captures this infinite liminal feel that, as she says, brings up ideas of endless learning and exploration, which is a feeling that museums could try to incorporate into their exhibitions. She also took inspiration from the museums she was taken to as a child.
I spent a lot of time at museums as a child, mostly like science museums, that kind of thing. We had some like children's science museums with like interactive exhibits. I loved that kind of thing as a kid, or the aquarium. Spent a lot of time there.
Almost everything in the museum, from the textures on the walls and floors to the fonts used and the images in the frames around the museum, are freely licensed. It's free to play and open source, published under the largely unrestricted MIT software license to allow other programmers to get involved with adding to it and improving it themselves, in a similar way to how Wikipedia itself operates. Aside from being entirely digital, Maya peppered in a few differences compared to a typical museum, many of which would be highly impractical in a museum in the real world, but could really help us to look at how museums can change in a new way.
I think it's partly kind of paying respect to Wikipedia, making it all possible. Like, if it weren't for their efforts to make all this information open, a project like this would never be possible, because if you think about doing it with like, even imagining there was a version of Wikipedia, some equivalent run by a private company like Google or something. If you imagine a world where that existed, there's no way there'd be just like free APIs to download all of this data and all of these things. And so the fact that like Wikipedia makes all of that free, I feel like it's only fair that something I build on top of it should be free too. And I think that like just kind of in the ethos of like what this kind of museum should be, I think if it wants to be a museum of everything, I feel like it should be for everyone also. There are definitely aspects of it where I think the experience leans on your familiarity with museums and like the difference to that space. Like, I think one thing that might be small, but like I have a run button, and that's something that it feels kind of funny in the museum to be sprinting through an exhibit. That's not something you're allowed to do, but because you have it all to yourself and you're alone in there, it becomes like a very different kind of space. It can become a space for like play and exploration in like a different way to a traditional museum. There's also some of this inspiration from like this notion of like liminal spaces that goes around on the internet. Things like the back rooms, or just people posting pictures of like an abandoned mall or parking lots at night or that sort of thing. And I feel like an empty museum fits into that too. They kind of add to the sort of eerie feeling of it's familiar, but it's not quite right. There's pools in places, like a pool of water in the middle of a carpeted room, and that's like strange, or things like that, where I think that kind of adds to like the eerie atmosphere a little bit, which is kind of a part of the experience, because I think it's also kind of, it's a big, huge kind of empty space, but it also contains everything, and that kind of has like a mood that I was going for with it.
Typical museums today might be able to learn something from some of the other differences in the moat, though. The images on the walls are part of this freely licensed experience, and a large part of the museum as a whole, almost acting as the exhibits themselves. They're placed in a context of reverence, rather than just as an image on a web page.
I mean, I guess to be honest, the reason I added the Wikimedia Commons was I felt like if you step into a room in the museum, I just wanted it to have as much as I could put in there, because I think what's exciting in the museum is walking into a room and it just like stretches on, and it's like, how can you have an exhibit this big that's just about like hot sauce or something, or silly topics like that. And so I think like Wikimedia Commons, it has a variety of levels of quality and levels of curation, where some of them have a huge number of things that have just been submitted by people, but having the exhibit be bigger and something that you can kind of like keep exploring and exploring. Like you find like a diamond in the rough, sometimes you have like a really interesting thing that will pop up that you just wouldn't have seen otherwise. And I think that makes it rewarding to explore. It just like adds to the feeling of exploration, the more things there are there to sift through.
There's also an idea of collaboration in the Museum of All Things that is much less common compared to your usual museum. While most museums have panels and labels of text written by one or two people, usually the curator, Wikipedia's text means that the panels you see in the moat have been iterated on by many more people with interest in the subject. Maya says this does cause some problems, however. Citation needed, as some Wikipedia editors might say.
I think I do like that it's something that represents like an effort by so many different people. Because I think that one thing, if I have something that I'm less crazy about, or something that I don't like as much with the way that I present the information, is that it can be harder to find like citations and things like that, which is like pretty important how Wikipedia is put together. So I was thinking it would be nice to have a way to fit that in where you can actually see more easily, like here's where these different things come from, and access that more easily.
When I asked Maya something that she would like to see in museums, she replied with something that very much aligns with the purpose of Wikipedia as a whole.
Like I was talking about earlier, like taking the museum kind of out of the usual context and turning it into more of a place that you can kind of explore freely and play in. I think that would be interesting to see museums embrace something where like it could be a place that you could go to a little more casually. Like I feel like the barriers of entry into a museum like give us a weird way of approaching it, where sometimes you can get museum fatigue because you go in there, you've paid $30 or something, and now you need to get the most out of it for that time. And you can't really exist in the space as much because it's now this economic thing where you have to make the most of your money for getting in. And I don't know, I think with a virtual museum or something that's different, you can go at your leisure, you can go at 3 a.m. You can leave it open for an hour and just sort of have it in the background or something. And I had this experience when I visited Washington, D.C. in America, where there's the Smithsonian and these sort of museums around there that are all free to enter. So I would go there in like the afternoon and just like hang out for like an hour or something in one particular area of the museum and really take things in. And I felt like that was such a neat way to experience it when it was just sort of a public place where entry was free. And yeah, I guess more free museums.
The Museum of All Things, just by being here, makes a case for curators and other museum professionals to encourage participation in museums, allow everyone to contribute and visit, and to maybe also take a cue from Wikipedia in fostering this participation. So, could Wikipedia really be part of what we call heritage? With a shared purpose to educate the world between both Wikipedia and the heritage sector, there's at least a case to be made. Maya Claire's Museum of All Things brought Wikipedia closer to a physical museum than ever before, and maybe it has the potential to bring museums closer to Wikipedia too. While we can wait and see as to whether Wikipedia will be accepted in UNESCO's Memory of the World list, that first petition will always be the first step of a quickly growing collaboration between Wikipedia and the heritage sector as a whole. Join me next episode for a tour of the Index Museum of the early 20th century, when museums themselves tried being a little bit encyclopedic, and ask how Wikipedia's philosophy could influence how museums work on a fundamental level. Thank you for listening to the first episode of Linked Heritage, a podcast about museums and Wikipedia. This podcast was scripted and edited by B. Campbell, and is a final project for my master's degree. I'd like to thank my two interviewees, Liam Wyatt and Maya Claire, and again, thanks for listening.